let's hear about daffodils. And Amy is going to share the beautiful slides that Helen's put together. So let me introduce you properly to Helen Ratcliffe, who I met about a month ago when I went along to an amazing barn, a farmyard barn, where amazing things were happening because lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of daffodils were being created. The lovely Karen Jones, who some of you will know, had tipped me off about this project because she's a volunteer gardener at Lowther. She said, there's an amazing thing going on. They're creating lots of daffodils that they're going to do a display and it's all for charity. So I found out a bit more, hooked up with Helen and had a really interesting sort of 90 minutes there recording some stuff, which is on the podcast. So without further ado, Helen is a remarkable woman doing a remarkable thing, and let's hear her story. So Helen, over to you.
Well, good morning, everyone. Lovely to meet you all. I'm sort of in the first 10 minutes getting to know your backgrounds and where this group is coming from. It's my first experience of it. And hello, Annie. But anyway, I'll crack on because there's a lot to tell you. It's an exciting project. So if we can go to the first slide, that would be great. Just the opening slide. Just a quick one, my background, I moved up to the Lake District about 6 years ago, was living in London, originally born in Preston, and my background is in public relations and marketing. And I started my foray into the pottery world about 4 years ago. So I am very much a junior potter, not experienced at all, but I thought I'd have a go at something a little bit bigger. Anyway, so what is 10,000 Daffodils? Hopefully you've heard about it by now. It is a charity fundraising ceramic art installation that will be on display at Lowther Castle from the 24th of April, to the 24th of June, so for 2 months. And so what we're talking, next slide, please. What we're talking about are these ceramic daffodils like this one, but there will be quite a number of them. If we can go on to the next slide. You can see some of them right now at Reged. So Westmoreland is our main sponsor. And so there are some on show at Reged and down at T-Bay North and T-Bay South. At T-Bay North, they are sitting on the island in the duck pond, and at T-Bay South, they are sitting on some floating rafts in the pond there. Next slide, please. So why are we doing this? So February last year, some of the folks at Friends of the Ullswater Way were talking about designating 2023 the year of art and landscape in Ullswater. And they asked me if I would, could I make something? Could I do something? And so being where I am, and I'm in Dockeray, just above, up above Glencoyne Bay, where Wordsworth gained his inspiration for the famous poem. And so I immediately thought of daffodils. And then a friend of mine said, oh, Helen, London poppies. And so I had a look at the poem, at Wordsworth's poem. And in the second verse there, it says 10,000 daffodils. Saw I at a glance. And so hence the name of the project, 10,000. However, we did decide to make 15,000 just to punish ourselves. And we just thought, let's raise some more money for the charities, the beneficiary charities, and the display will be a little bit more of a spectacle. So, so there we go. Next slide, please. And so the beneficiary charities, we have 6 charities, 4 are local and 2 are national London. And so Annie's on well, she's just walked away, I think, from her desk, but Annie's on Sunbeams is one of them locally, I'm sure you all know. And then Ullswater Catchment Management, which is one very local to me here in the Matterdale Valley, Danny Teasdale, who works on sustainable farming and working on alleviating flooding in the Ullswater Valley. And then James's Place, which is a more national charity and is Lowther Castle's charity, corporate charity, focuses on young people and avoiding suicide. And then we have Friends of the Ullswater Way, looking at celebrating the heritage of the valley. New Horizon Youth Centre is a charity in London, which is a day centre to support young people, again, who are homeless. And I worked with them for many years when I was in London, and a charity I continue to support. And then finally, Another Way, which is an educational environment charity of which I am a trustee. This was founded by a girl called Amy Bray in 2019 when she was 16 years old. So she's now 20. And it's great having a young boss. It's fantastic. The energy that you get from the young people is incredible. Maybe she's the reason that I decided to do this project. Anyway, so moving on. So where did it all start? So I had the idea, and then I just thought, hang on a minute, I need to make sure I can actually make these daffodils. And so I started playing about with some designs and sizes, and I'm sure some of you know a little bit about pottery. You may be a potter yourself, but from making a daffodil from raw clay through to the glazed finished piece, a daffodil, the clay will shrink. And so it took a while to work out the sizings in order to, from start to finish, so that the finished piece would connect to the stem, the washers, and the washers would fit down the trumpet, etc., etc. So it took a while to get that right. While I was doing that, I thought, I wonder if I can make big ones of these. So if we go on to the next slide, I then started playing around with making some large daffodils, and I proved I could do it. So I just thought, well, that could be an extra part to the programme. So not only have we made 15,000 of the smaller daffodils, we've also made 10 of the large daffodils, and asked notable people in that we know of to come up with either the designs for the glaze to go on them, or to do them themselves if they're potters. So there's those two elements to the project in terms of the actual ceramics. Next slide, please. So the first thing I did was to create a team. So, and how do you do that? You invite your closest friends round for dinner, feed them well, give them lots of lovely wine, and then ask them and talk to them about the project. And they all said yes. So these are friends in the valley. On the left there is Jane Petrie, Emma Bray, Helen Reid, Michael Reid, myself, and then my husband, Nick, and our dog, Aggie. And so that was the core daffodil team established in July last year. Next slide, please. And so the next step was to find a venue for these things. You know, the obvious place would have been Glencoyne Bay, because that's where Wordsworth gained his inspiration, or Dorothy did. And so, but I just realised security, the daffodils would be stolen and it just wouldn't work there. I did go and have a chat with Dale Main, but they thought the project was too big for them to support in terms of visitor numbers. And then finally, Lowther, we had a conversation with Lowther, and actually it fits just beautifully with the story of the Yellow Earl. They hold the world record for number of real daffodils planted in a session, and various other reasons. And they've been a fantastic partner on this, supporting us all the way. And so we came, had a meeting with them, and then it was all steam ahead from September. So really we didn't know until late September that we had a venue, and here we are. Next week we'll be planting 15,000 daffodils. So moving on, the next step was to get funding for the project. Spent a lot of time applying for grants, and understandably local authority, county council grants weren't forthcoming because the project is deemed as forward funding, because we were looking for funding to create funding to support charities, and the local authorities don't support that. So the first thing I did was to set up a crowdfund and then started approaching local businesses, and then applying for some grants. So we got to about 60% of the money that we needed for production funding. Ideally, I wanted to be able to have 100%, and then that all the money raised from selling the daffodils would go to the charities. But we didn't get quite there, so some of it will have to come out of the money that we raised for charities. So next slide, please. The next thing was to sort of look at all the equipment and materials and everything that we needed to run the project. So I started approaching all the suppliers, and we've just had unbelievable support. So, for example, Northern Kilns have loaned us the kilns for the firing of the project free of charge. So we'll have had the kilns on site for some 3 or 4 months. Valentine Clays, who supplied the clay, provided it at 50% of the price. Interlude Ceramics is my teacher, Mary Chapelhow, over at Broome Hall. We've done some firing at her studios, and she has been my guiding light on this project all the way along when things haven't been going so well. I've always just had a chat with Mary, and she's solved problems for me, which is great. MW in the middle is Mark Williamson, our photographer, and he is doing it free of charge for us, and he's a fantastic, he's recently moved here from Manchester. Greenlight Packaging is a company in Wales, and they're providing the biodegradable peanuts that will go into the packaging, and those are completely free of charge. We're going to be auctioning the large daffodils. H&H are doing the auction for free. RH Nuttall are the guys that gave us the washers for the connecting the heads to the stems. So it's just, the support's been amazing. So I think we've sort of gained about £15,000 worth of support through suppliers just supporting the project. So next slide. So my head has pretty much looked like this for the last 4 months, just full of numbers, working out, to start with, how many daffodils are we going to be able to make in an hour? So how many volunteers do we need to do that? When are they going to be finished? How many kiln firings do I need to do? How much clay do I need? How much glaze do I need? And then training supervisors so that I can be going off and doing other jobs while the supervisors are managing the production. How are we going to store all this sort of stuff? How's the assembly going to work? It's just been a constant numbers going through my head every night before I go to sleep, which is not a good time for that to be happening. Anyway, we are nearly there, which is great. Next slide, please. So one of the biggest challenges was volunteers, and I worked with, in my team, my Daffodil Club team, Emma Bray led the volunteer management and outreach, and what a job this was. We have, if we can go on to the next slide. So we needed to work out, how many volunteers we need for production, how many supervisors, how many volunteers we need for assembly, for planting. Once they're planted, we need to have installation maintenance, because we need somebody to go there every day to make sure the daffodils are all still standing. We are going to have a shop at Lowther to be able to sell to people who won't necessarily go through to see the daffodils, people to pick the daffodils, pack the daffodils. So how did we get to all those people? Next slide, please. So we reached out to local groups, just any group that we could think of, schools, youth groups, craft groups, sports, gardening groups, WIs, etc., etc. We put a story out in the local media, social media, and then posters on parish notice boards. And from that, by the end of October, we had 500 volunteers signed up, and the schedule was full. So we started production on December the 8th. We finished at the end of March, but that production schedule was full by the end of October. The response was absolutely overwhelming. And if you just think about the management of that schedule over the 4 months, where whilst people have signed up, they might just, suddenly they can't come along. So we need to fill that spot because we've got to keep the production numbers up. And so it really was pretty much a full-time job for Emma over the last 3-4 months. So just amazing. Next slide, please. So we have our volunteers on board. The next thing is the production site. So the picture top left is when we visited the barn that Lowther had sort of allocated to us. We visited it in September. And when we visited it, it was lovely and warm. And we were just, wow, this is great space. We'll be able to, have tables out here and get this all done. It's just fantastic. Anyway, what we didn't think about, and thankfully my wonderful production manager, Michael Reed, who is striding across the barn, thought this through and thought, hang on a minute, we're going to be making these in the midst of winter. And so thought about getting some containers in. So we worked with this container company in Manchester, who one of our team's husband had worked with all his life. And so yet another supplier giving us an amazing deal. And we had one container, the one on the right was where the production took place. There was heating in there, it was insulated, so it was a lovely place to work. The container on the left was where we were starting to store everything. Picture on the right is a room that we used for all the kiln firing, etc. Next slide, please. However, on day one, production day one, if you look at the temperature on my car dash, it was -8.5 degrees. So we arrived at the barn and turned on the tap in the production cabin. Water was frozen, no water. So there were lots of challenges on day one. And also in the kiln room where my husband Nick was working, preparing the clay and getting it ready for production. We hadn't got the kilns firing. So with 2 fan heaters, he managed to get the heating up to the temperature up to 1 degree. So the first few weeks he was working in 1 degree, which wasn't very pleasant. Anyway, next slide, please. This is my husband in the kiln room. So what he would do is, top left picture, you can see slabs of clay. First couple of weeks are beautiful. There's a white machine next to him, top left, which was a motorized slab rolling machine, but that was 2 weeks late. So he had to be going up to Mary Chapel House at Broom Hall 3 times a day to roll out the clay and bring it back for the production to feed the machine. And at the same time, he was also making the trumpets, which we made using an extruder. And the dog slept a lot while he was doing this. And we also had to keep the clay at our house because the temperature was too cold at the barn. You can't allow the clay to freeze or get any frost on it, otherwise it's unusable. So we were bringing clay over every day for the production side of things. Next slide, please. So yeah, Nick was in charge of the kiln room and humour and illustrations. So he prepared diagrams that were in the production cabin on how to make the daffodils and all sorts of things along the way. So he's a brilliant creative person. And there he is wedging, if anybody's a potter, top right, the guy in the check shirt is a chap called Jim Robeson, who is well known for his outdoor installations. And he's about 85 years old, and I did some time with him a couple of years ago. And he's designed one of the big daffodils, but here's my husband teaching Jim how to wedge the clay. I think it may have been the other way around. Anyway, next slide, please. And so on to actually making the daffodils. So as I said, we had production supervisors, and here's Gilly Unwin from Dacre, one of our production supervisors, working with the team on making the daffodils. Next slide, please. So the process of making was pretty straightforward. So 3 parts to the daffodil, 2 petals, sets of petals, and then the trumpet. if you can see top left, they're using a cutter to cut out the petals. I actually had those 3D printed. I had spoken to a steel manufacturer about making them, but they wanted thousands of pounds. And there's a guy at Emont Bridge who does 3D printing. And he made those for me for £10 each, which was quite a bargain, really. And they lasted the time, actually. They had some pretty vigorous use over the 3 months. But so that's pretty much the process of making the daffodils from start to finish in terms of the clay. Next slide, please. After that, the clay has to dry out completely before it can be bisque fired. If there's any water left in the clay and it goes into the kiln, they will explode. And we found, because of the temperatures at the barn, the daffodils weren't drying out. So every day we were bringing home 300-400 daffodils to dry out at home, rotating them around the house in different temperatures to get the daffodils eventually dry over a period of 3 or 4 days. So yeah, we've had 15,000 daffodils come through our house. It's nice to have the house back. And then the picture on the right is Mary Chapel House, huge kiln at Broome. And when you're bisque firing, you can just tumble all the daffodils in, and I could get 600 daffodils in at a time there. So that's the bisque firing. And then next slide, please. After that is the glazing. So we were, again, volunteers dipping the daffodils into glaze. And then the ladies on the right are actually doing the most important job, which is bottom wiping. So if there's any glaze on the bottom of the daffodils when they go into the kiln, glaze is like glass, and they would fuse to the kiln shelf. So each daffodil had to have its bottom wiped. And then bottom left, you see them just coming out of the kiln. And then the picture with the glow is a view through the one of the vent holes into the kiln. You can see the daffodil trumpet firing there. So next slide, please. So then it was on to assembly, and we sourced 15,000 half-metre lengths of steel, but of course daffodils have a bent stem, so we had to bend each of those stems. So volunteers, I would say 90% of the volunteers were women and 10% men, but a lot of the volunteers' husbands would come along and take some of the stems away and sit at home and bend the stems for us, which was great. And so on. And then Michael devised an amazing assembly process. Because when we did the first assembly, we just had 2 rubber washers either side, underneath and then in the trumpet. And we hadn't realised that the stems had been extruded in oil. And so when we brought the daffodil into the warmth, the head started slipping down the stem. And so Michael came up with a great solution in that we got some metal star washers. And so first of all, a metal star washer went on, which locks into place on the stem, then the rubber washer, then the head, then another rubber washer, and then another star washer inside. So these things are very solid. If anybody has one of the London poppies, these are much more solid and robust than the London poppies. Next slide, please. And so yesterday, we, as the Daffodil Club, had the final session doing the assembly, and we now have 15,000 daffodils ready to plant next week. Next slide, please. There were lots of things that went on in the background of the project, all the brand development, the website, social media, fundraising, counting numbers, sourcing packaging, doing talks, dealing with Royal Mail, which is a whole job in itself, but we are there. So, but lots of work behind the scenes. Oh, and also, yeah, boxes, getting the boxes. Sainsbury's and Booths were absolutely fantastic in keeping boxes and apple trays for us. They were invaluable. We've got something like, I think, about 1,500 boxes at the barn that we'll have to recycle at the end of the project. Next slide, please. And then, of course, all the wonderful press coverage that we've had. And so and the latest being BBC Breakfast, which managed to crash our website on Monday, which was rather frustrating, but that piece boosted sales quite significantly of the daffodils. PR works, and I have to say that because it justifies my career for the last 19 years. So, yeah, we've had some fantastic coverage and hopefully more to come when we do the opening. Next slide, please. So next up, yeah, we are planting the daffodils next week, over 3 days. So the area in Lowther's garden will be cordoned off, so visitors won't be able to go through, but they'll be able to see us at work. The display will be the 24th of April, 24th of June. Then then it's not over. We have to pick the daffodils, and then we have to pack the daffodils and send them on their merry way to all their owners. Next slide, please. And then, yeah, the big daffodils, I've made 10 large daffodils. We've had some disasters along the way with them. So the bottom left picture is it in its greenware state before it gets fired to bisque. We've lost a couple at that stage where when we've been moving it around, the petals have broken. When it goes to bisque firing, we've had one explode in the kiln because it clearly wasn't dried out enough. Yesterday I picked one up that had been glaze fired and that had cracked in the kiln. So we're just going back to the drawing board on the 10th daffodil. So one of them may be late for the exhibition, but it's the nature of ceramics and the time frames we're trying to work with. So the folks that we, next slide please, have designing the daffodils include Mary Chapel-Howe, Rory Stewart, Dan Pearson, Jim Lowther, and then the bottom right is Matilda, age 7. We ran a competition for young people, and Matilda won the 5 to 10-year-old category, and that's her design. Next slide, please. And then I'm doing one, William Plumtree from South Lakes, Jim Roberson, who I talked about earlier, James Rebanks, and then again, the design on the right is Nia from Moorland School. She won the 11 to 16-year-old category. Next slide, please. That's it. That's the project. It's been a lot of work, but I think hopefully it'll be a fantastic site next week from the 24th at Lowther. That's me.
Wow. What a project, Helen. How many have sold so far? Can you give us a sort of a running total?
We've sold 3,500 so far.
Okay, and you're aiming to sell all 15,000?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then the big ones, I think you said, are they auctioned, did you say?
Yeah, those are being auctioned, and each glaze designer or maker has nominated a charity of their choice for the monies raised to go to. Yeah.
Okay.
Having the auction, and the auction will just be online only.
Yep.
From the 22nd of June, probably for about 2 or 3 days it'll run for. But we'll have more news on that.
People saying lovely things in chat. Has anybody got any questions for Helen while we're together? Because I just feel this is an astonishing example of an arts project, a community project, great fundraising, pulling in stakeholders, project management. There's so many things that I know you're still in the middle of it, Helen, and it's not time to kind of reflect yet and do an evaluation. But how you use volunteers, how you recruit volunteers, how you do PR. It's almost a case study of a big project that is remarkably ambitious, but actually is rooted in Cumbria. I know some of the charities are Cumbrian, some are national, but it's Cumbrians that have made this happen, and it's a Cumbrian, sponsors, Cumbrian location where you're doing it. There's a lot of Cumbria in all of this as well. Does anybody want to pick up on anything? Simon, who's obviously another man who makes amazing things happen on pretty large scale, and we're going to hear more from Simon shortly about the Knotted Project's current project. But Simon, come off mute and...
Yeah, hi Helen. I just thought that was really, really amazing and very, very interesting. Like, I feel like I've learned an awful lot about an art form that I didn't know much about before. But as a husband and wife team running the Knotted Project, I know how much a project like this can kind of take over your life. And like you said, like I can fully relate to the idea of so many items that are non-home related in your house, and you walk into your kitchen and you look around and you're like, oh my God, what have we done? I can kind of relate to the amount of hard work that goes into pulling something like this together. And I know that sounds like next week, that you've got a lot on, but I just wondered whether you'd kind of carved out a bit of time to really, I'm sure there are a huge amount that you've really enjoyed, of kind of a huge amount of moments through the project that you've enjoyed. But I just wonder if you've carved out a little bit of time in the kind of crux of the project coming up that you can really kind of reflect and just enjoy it.
Yeah, interesting question. Have I thought about that? I don't know. Well, I think certainly after the installation goes live on the 24th, then I will have some time to step back a little bit and just sit still. I think that's the important part. But yeah, it has been a bit crazy. But I certainly, since the actual making of the daffodil heads finished, it has slowed down. There was just so much upfront work with trying to get funding, trying to get sponsors, trying to get the suppliers on board, getting the volunteers on board. Really, the time last year before we started making was the most hectic time. I think once we're into making, my shoulders did drop a little bit. And I could just concentrate on one thing for a while. But yeah, I will take some time out, don't worry, to reflect, absolutely.
Thank you, Simon. Back to Simon shortly. Barbara and then Annie.
Yeah, I've been following this project. I think it's thought it was a great project. And I just want, and the links with the big poppy project that was on, again, an idea I thought was wonderful. But it was just to say thank you for that. And also my children have bought me one of the daffodils, which was their Mother's Day present to me. And so I'm just saying thank you for that. And I really look forward to getting my daffodil eventually. And I will be at Lowther on the 24th with two of my kids anyway, to see the project in situ. So mine is just a thank you.
Oh, great. Well, thank you for the kids for buying the daffodils. The charities say thank you too.
Thank you, Barbara. Annie.
Hello, Helen.
Hi, Annie.
As one of the lucky recipients of your work, you are phenomenal. Your energy and passion and care. I don't know how you've done it. We met you that very first week, and we just didn't think it would happen like it has. And it's been great for me to see all this background, and I endorse everything Tom said. Every aspect of what you have done, you've just never given up. So I'd like to say public thank you to you. Thank you so much. And
Thanks,
see
Helen.
you next week. Yeah.
Have you learned anything about yourself, Helen? Or did you kind of, is this the sort of person that you are and you can do this and you knew you could do it? Because you sort of, I asked you that question, I think, when we met, and you said, no, I knew this was going to work okay. Obviously, the bumps in the road and curves and whatever, but where's that inner self-confidence and belief come from? And tell us a bit about how it's been Helen.
Interesting. I think so. I remember when I was finishing my degree at university, and at the time the economy wasn't very good, and my father said to me, I worry about you, I pity you coming out of university into the workplace now. It's going to be hard work. And so I really remember that comment. And since then, I've just always worked hard at anything that I do. I wouldn't say I'm the brightest button in the box, but I work hard for things. I've been fortunate that, when I had my company in London, I worked with some very large organizations like Google and Amazon, etc., and worked on some very, very large complex projects, marketing and PR projects. So have had that experience, but I think this was different because it was putting me in the limelight, not a client, in terms of getting this done and it not failing. So, yeah, just determined, I think. And you know, the most important thing is what this will do for the charities, and what, you know, there's some very small charities involved here, and these funds are going to be quite significant for them to make some differences in what they do. So changes for them.
I can see Annie nodding there. And if you shift them all, and by the way, that last slide that Amy put up about, you know, so next steps, whatever, you know, if there's one thing that all of us on this call can do, it's just help spread the word about this project. You've shifted 3,500, which means there's still, if my maths is right, 11,500 to sell, plus the ones to auction. So there's still a lot of daffodils to sell. It's not by any means a given that all those are going to shift. So anything that you feel you can do to help spread the word about this, I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, Helen. You'd encourage.
No, absolutely. I think the message, I think a lot of people across Cumbria know about it. It's about getting it nationwide, I think, is the next step. And certainly, you know, BBC Breakfast showed what an impact it can make on the sales. So I think once people see the daffodils in situ, you know, Lowther said they were expecting something like 30,000 visitors, and so, you know, we need a third of those to buy a daffodil, and then, you know, and that's without any further publicity. But so fingers crossed.
Okay, Derek saying remarkable. Lavinia saying so inspiring. Looking forward to seeing this. Thank you. How awesome this project is. Jodie saying amazing. Well done, Team Daffodil. Looking forward to seeing it. So, you know, lots of support. And as you say, if we can do anything to spread the word within Cumbria, but also beyond Cumbria, then that's our task for following your talk this morning. And by the way, thank you for taking out the time this morning to share the, you know, the inner workings of it, because I think I could see people sort of making notes and nodding along while you were talking. And as Simon says, stuff like this can really overtake your life. So to see someone else's experience, I think will be, you know, this network, these calls are about championing stuff going on, but it's also about sharing, collaboration, learning. So thank you for sharing this morning.
Well, thanks for everybody listening.
All right. Well, stick around because the last few minutes, we've got 10 minutes left, Helen, thank you. Yeah, we're going to hand over to Simon, who, as I said, and has mentioned before, again, a great organizer of great projects, ambitious, doing the right things with the right people in the right way. So tell us about what's going on with the Forge Festival, Simon, which is taking place, I think, later this month. And we've got a bit of film. Amy's got a bit of film lined up from last year for when you're ready as well.
Perfect. Well, yeah, thanks for tuning in, everybody. So firstly, our website is in a terrible state, I'm afraid. So I'd like to direct people to that, but it's not easy to get to at the minute. So if you're interested in more, I'll try and pop a couple of links in the chat. But firstly, the Knotted Project. So we're a theatre company based in Kendal, and we specialise in making work with and for young people. So for us, that's all about making projects happen. You know, touring theatre productions or interactive experiences for young people and their families to be inspired by. And the other part of our work is the flip side of that. It's teaching young people skills and getting them involved in creative projects so that young people can develop those creative skills and hopefully it can have a really positive impact on their life. So that's the work that we do. And 2 years ago, we were funded by Arts Council England. We got £80,000 to run 2 years of Forge Festival. So last year we did the first project, the first Forge Festival. And the concept of Forge Festival is all about putting artists into spaces with groups of young people for a good kind of 2 to 3 month period, teaching them the skills of their particular art form, and then helping those young people create a unique, original performance in response to that art form and to a theme that we set that group. And then in partnership with Lakeland Arts, all those groups of young people come together for a big, exciting kind of takeover festival experience where they perform for each other and visiting audiences, and just a real big celebration. So I'll talk a bit about the people involved and what's going on this year. So firstly, much like Helen, I'm in the midst of the project currently, and it's kind of crunch time. So there are young people that have been in rehearsal all week this week, and after this call, I'm nipping through to work with another group of young people. But firstly, the festival is going to be on the 29th and the 30th of April, and it's going to be at Windermere Jetty Museum, which is a beautiful spot if you've not been before. It's a boating and heritage museum, but it's a really inspiring space, really kind of big, bold architecture right on the shores of Windermere. And our job basically is to go and do a big takeover of that space and just get young people performing here, there and everywhere, indoors and outdoors, and just a big takeover. So the theme of the festival this year is breaking through. And each of the groups of young people that are working, there's about 70 young people involved this year. And they are split into kind of 4 groups. So there's a group working up at Theatre by the Lake with more of a dance focus. There's a group that I've been working with, a group of young carers in partnership with Carer Support South Lakes, who are amazing. I've spent the last couple of days with them. And then we've got another group of young people just from the general area that have all come together to work with me again at Windermere Jetty. And then we've got a group from Queen Catherine School too. And the idea is that we've got people from all over Cumbria, and then they all kind of come together. Big key partnerships. It's one of those projects I struggle to quickly summarise, so I'll do my best job on it. What and why I think I've covered, funding and who's involved. So yeah, it's an Arts Council funded project. Lakeland Arts are the key partner on that. And then there's a host of other partnerships. So I think one that's particularly important to mention is a partnership with Wave Forward. So that is a local mental health charity based in South Lakeland, and they specialise in the mental health support for young people locally. So we feel that quite often in a creative project, young people really benefit hugely from being involved in creativity. And we wanted to make sure that they had a kind of direct channel of support when they're in the room with us. So when they've got those feelings coming up in a rehearsal process, or if they share something that they've got on their mind and they want to talk to somebody, we've actually got this partnership with Way Forward to ensure that there's a mental health practitioner in the room with us when we're rehearsing with that group of young people, and they can kind of access that support. So one-on-one support, if they need it, they can book in a slot, or they can just have a group kind of workshop about mental health and how they can look after themselves. So it really is kind of fusing mental health and creativity, which I think is really, really important. Shall we go to the video now, and then I'll chat a bit more after that. I think this is just 2 minutes long, but it'll give you a sense. This is an evaluation film from last year, and it'll give you a sense. Look at that screenshot. This will give you a sense perhaps of the process and what the young people involved feel when they're part of the process.
The future fight, which is the theme of the festival this year, really comes through in all the young people's work, and that could be on a personal level for them, or it could be on a global level. What have we got to deal with, and what are young people facing as they head into the future? We've got musicians, we've got choreographers, theatre makers, actors, filmmakers. There's so many amazing professionals working on this, and we want to give them the opportunity to have a super high quality experience.
I feel like this is going to be like another boom of inspiration for people, hopefully, to find their love again in what they used to love and enjoy doing.
It's a good way of expressing how we're feeling and our feelings towards issues that are going on.
It's showing the older generations that there needs to be something done about the problems that not necessarily they've caused, but they have passed down to us.
You don't need to find an answer or, a solution to anything, but it was just good to discuss and find commonalities with different people who were going through similar things or have slightly different experiences, but come together with that and find support.
Next year we really go up a level for the festival, and we work with more groups, more young people and more artists, which is really, really exciting.
I really think people are going to come away really having a hard think about the future and what we can do better. That's our main goal with this piece, is to make sure that people hear us.
Thank you. So yeah, that maybe gives you a sense of what it's all about. But I think something important to mention is that the idea is that there's, we hope that there's a bit of a ladder system offered to young people when they're part of this project. And the idea is that young people in these performance companies could see the next stage of development for them as an individual and hopefully be inspired to continue on that creative journey. So this year, a big development, we've got all these groups of young people working and then coming to perform. But then in addition to that, we've also, so there's about 70 young people, as I said, and between them, they're getting about, I think something like 4,300 hours worth of contact time with artists. So it's really kind of thorough, I think is the right word. And it feels really nice. It's not a kind of parachute project and we don't kind of pop in and then pop back out. It feels something that's really kind of rooted and that we're really developing these relationships with these young people. But in addition to the young people involved this year, there's early career artists as well. So as part of the festival, we've got 5 early career artists that have each received £1,000 commission. And again, a huge amount of additional support around them to try and help them get a brand new performance piece that they want to create off the ground. And they've got the opportunity in the platform at the festival to perform and to share their work for the first time with young people. So they've had lots of kind of training on fundraising and developing a piece, producing freelancer skills, all sorts of stuff. So there's those guys too. And then beyond them, there's professional companies coming in to perform as part of the festival too. So hopefully everyone can see the next stage of development and be inspired about kind of being part of something quite big and yeah, connected. It kind of brings people together to kind of share that takeover of the space, which I think is lovely.
Okay, Simon, 30 seconds, if you could just wrap up.
Yeah, sure. So I would say the core of Forge Festival is all about co-creation. So it's not artists going into a space with young people and saying, here's your script, learn it, perform at this time. It's going in and saying, let's respond to a theme. You've got an audience, you've got a platform. What do you want to say to the world? What do you want to say to the people turning up? And what are the messages coming from young people that need to be heard and need to be said? So that's what it's all about. And this year, it is all about breaking through. That is their theme. So that's what everything is responding to. 29th and 30th of April. And you can purchase tickets. I believe Kate popped a link in the chat, so thank you for that. And it's at Windermere Jetty Museum. So hope to see you there and please do spread the word.
Fantastic. I went last year, it was great. I'm looking forward to going again this year and seeing stuff happening before my very eyes. And Simon, thank you for all the work you put into that. I know it's not just you, but it's largely people around you that are doing this. So thank you for doing that. And I look forward to may the I know it's not all outdoors either, but some of it is. So may the stars shine brightly on the weather as well. Thank you very much.
Yeah, last year we had young people performing in puddles and rain. They felt really cool and powerful, so it didn't matter. So
added to the drama and the jeopardy.
Exactly.
Thank you very much. It's 10:29, so we're almost there. Kate, you wanted to mention the Cumbria Opera Group.
I do, because speaking of early career professionals, the Cumbria Opera Group is at it again, and this time they are in Grange-over-Sands this Sunday in the afternoon and evening. 2 performances of Bach's St. John's Passion. And having seen their work several times before, I really, really recommend making that journey. They are an outstanding group of young creatives and musicians who are very active part of this network, and we wish them all the best for their performance. So if you're down that neck of the woods, I know it's a long way, but I recommend it. Please pass it on. Thank you.
It's not a long way for everyone. And the Victoria Hall, apparently, is a beautiful place. I've never been there, but those of you that know the Victoria Hall in Grange-over-Sands, I hear it's a beautiful place. Thank you to Helen. I'm glad all your bottom wiping is finished, Helen. That must be a great pleasure and a relief to everybody. Thank you, Simon. Good luck with final plans for the Forge Festival. Next week, we're going to hear about a lovely new willow building going on at Torquay Tarn for watching stars in the sky. That's near Brampton. We're going to hear about a new folk festival called the Moor Forge Festival. And we're also going to hear about Print Fest, which is coming back again to the Coronation Hall in Ulverston shortly as well. So 3 things on the agenda so far for next week. Thank you to Helen. Thank you to Simon. Thanks to everybody for your contributions as well. Great to see everybody again. Have a good week. Colin, I'm glad it's helped with your recovery as well. And good luck with that as you progress. See you all again soon, I hope. Cheerio.